Here's something that's going to upset a lot of truck owners. Your all-wheel drive SUV might actually be worse in the snow than your neighbor's front-wheel drive sedan. Sounds impossible, right? Stick with me, because by the end of this video you're going to understand exactly why drivetrain marketing has been lying to you for decades, and which system actually deserves the reputation it has. Let's start with front-wheel drive, because it's the one everyone loves to disrespect, and honestly, that reputation is mostly undeserved. In a front-wheel drive car, the engine sends all of its power to the two front wheels only. The transmission, differential, and drive components are all packed together at the front of the car, which means there's no need for a long drive shaft running to the rear wheels. That's the entire reason front-wheel drive dominates economy cars and family sedans. It's cheaper to manufacture, lighter overall, and it frees up interior space since there's no transmission tunnel running through the middle of the cabin. Here's the controversial part about front-wheel drive that people conveniently forget. It's actually pretty good in snow, and most people have no idea why. When you're driving uphill or accelerating, weight naturally shifts toward the rear of the car. In a front-wheel drive vehicle, that's a problem because you're taking weight away from the exact wheels that are trying to put power down. But here's the twist. The engine itself is sitting directly over the front wheels. That engine weight presses those drive wheels into the road, giving them significantly more traction than people expect. This is exactly why front-wheel drive economy cars often handle light snow better than heavy trucks with all their weight sitting toward the rear axle. There's another underrated advantage too, because front-wheel drive cars are mechanically simpler. With fewer driveline components between the engine and the road, there's less that can actually break. No transfer case, no rear differential, no extra drive shaft running the length of the car. Fewer parts means fewer things to maintain, fewer things to fail at 70,000 miles, and a genuinely lower cost of ownership over the life of the vehicle. The controversy here isn't the technology, it's the reputation. Front-wheel drive gets treated like the budget option for people who don't care about driving, when in reality it's a genuinely smart, efficient engineering solution that outperforms its stereotype in a lot of real conditions. Now let's talk about all-wheel drive, because this is where the marketing department has done some of its best work convincing people of things that aren't entirely true. All-wheel drive systems send power to all four wheels, but critically, most all-wheel drive systems on the road today are not constantly splitting power evenly. Instead, they operate primarily in front or rear-wheel drive under normal conditions, and only engage additional wheels when sensors detect wheel slip, using systems like viscous couplings or electronically controlled clutch packs. This distinction matters enormously because it means the system is reactive, not proactive. It's responding to slip that's already happening, not preventing it in the first place. Here's the controversial truth about all-wheel drive that dealerships really don't want you thinking too hard about. All-wheel drive helps you go. It does almost nothing to help you stop or turn. This is the single most dangerous misconception on the road today. All-wheel drive distributes engine power to help you accelerate with better traction. But the moment you take your foot off the gas and hit the brakes, all-wheel drive contributes essentially nothing. Stopping distance is almost entirely determined by your tires. A driver with all-wheel drive and worn all-season tires can genuinely have worse real-world winter safety than a front-wheel drive car running proper winter tires. Because that driver gets a false sense of confidence, accelerating into situations they can't actually stop or turn their way out of. All-wheel drive doesn't make you invincible in snow. It just makes it easier to get moving, sometimes into trouble you weren't prepared to handle. There's also a maintenance reality that a lot of all-wheel drive owners don't budget for. These systems add real mechanical complexity, extra differentials, drive shafts, and in many cases, electronically controlled clutch packs that need service over time. All-wheel drive vehicles also tend to burn more fuel than their front-wheel drive equivalents, simply because there's more rotating mass and more drivetrain friction constantly present, even when the extra wheels aren't actively doing much work. You're paying for that added traction potential every single time you fill up the tank, whether you ever actually need it that week or not. Now let's get into four-wheel drive, the system most associated with trucks and serious off-roading, and honestly, the one most misunderstood by everyday drivers who buy it. Traditional four-wheel drive uses a transfer case to send power to both the front and rear axles, often with a low-range gear set specifically designed for extreme low-speed torque in off-road conditions, crawling over rocks, climbing steep inclines, or plowing through deep mud. In part-time four-wheel drive systems, which are still common on trucks and body-on-frame SUVs, the front and rear axles are locked together to spin at the exact same speed, which is fantastic for off-road traction. Here's the controversial part of four-wheel drive, and this one genuinely surprises people who assume more capability always means better performance. Locking your front and rear axles together and driving on dry pavement can actually cause driveline binding. Because your front and rear wheels travel slightly different distances during a turn, forcing them to spin at exactly the same speed creates internal stress in the drivetrain on high traction surfaces. That's exactly why owners' manuals for part-time four-wheel drive vehicles explicitly warn against using four-wheel drive on dry pavement. The very system that makes these trucks unstoppable off-road can actually damage components or cause unpredictable handling if you leave it engaged on a normal dry road. It's a system engineered for maximum capability in extreme conditions, at the direct cost of everyday, on-road practicality, and a lot of truck owners genuinely don't realize they're supposed to be switching it on and off depending on the surface. It's also worth mentioning that modern four-wheel drive systems have gotten smarter, with electronically controlled transfer cases and automatic modes that try to blend the line between part-time and full-time systems. Some newer trucks and SUVs now offer an automatic four-wheel drive setting that can be left engaged on pavement without the binding risk of older mechanical systems. But that added electronics and complexity comes with its own cost, both at the dealership and down the road when sensors or actuators eventually need replacing. There's no version of this technology that's simple, cheap, and universally usable. You're always trading something to get that extreme off-road capability. Before we rank these three, let's talk about upfront cost, because this is where the decision gets real for most buyers. Front-wheel drive versions of a given model are almost always the cheapest trim available, sometimes by several $1,000s compared to the all-wheel drive option on the same car. All-wheel drive typically adds a meaningful premium, both at purchase and in that ongoing fuel economy penalty we already covered. Four-wheel drive, especially on trucks and body-on-frame SUVs, often commands the highest price of all three, partly because of the added hardware, and partly because it's marketed as the premium, most capable option, even when most buyers will never use that capability. None of that upfront cost is wasted money if you're actually using the system for what it's built for, but it becomes pure overhead the moment it's sitting unused in a driveway. So let's actually settle this, because at this point you've got three technologies, each one genuinely excellent at a specific job and genuinely mediocre outside of it. Here's how they actually rank, depending on what you're using the car for. Coming in at number 3 overall for the average daily driver is four-wheel drive, and don't let that ranking fool you. It's not because the technology is weak, it's because it's wildly overspecialized for what most people actually need. If your daily life involves rock crawling, deep mud, or genuine backcountry trails, four-wheel drive isn't just the best choice. It's honestly the only choice. Nothing else comes close to its low-range torque and lock-taxle capability. But for the overwhelming majority of drivers who will never leave pavement, you're carrying extra weight, dealing with worse fuel economy, and living with a system that actively requires you to think about when it's safe to even use it. It's the most capable system in the entire lineup, and also the least suited to how most people actually spend their driving time. Number 2 goes to front-wheel drive, and I know that's going to make some people furious, but hear me out. For pure practicality, cost, fuel efficiency, and honestly, surprisingly competent performance in light to moderate snow when paired with good tires, front-wheel drive is the quiet workhorse that does exactly what most drivers actually need without charging a premium for capability they'll never use. It's not exciting, it's not going to impress anyone at a dealership, but it's efficient, reliable, and genuinely underrated. If you're being completely honest about how you actually drive, most days, most trips, most weather you'll ever encounter, front-wheel drive quietly gets the job done for a fraction of the cost and complexity of the other two systems. And taking the top spot for the widest range of everyday drivers dealing with unpredictable weather is all-wheel drive, but only when people understand what it actually does and doesn't do. When paired with quality tires, and used by a driver who understands that acceleration traction is not the same thing as stopping or turning traction. All-wheel drive genuinely delivers the most balanced, confidence-inspiring experience across rain, light snow, and mixed road conditions, without the on-road compromises that come with a true four-wheel drive system. It earns the top spot not because it's the most capable system in extreme conditions, but because it's the best all-around compromise for how most people actually drive, day after day, in conditions that are unpredictable but rarely extreme. It's the system that quietly saves you on that one unexpected icy morning commute, without demanding you understand transfer cases or worry about driveline binding on the way to work. So here's the real takeaway. There's no single best drivetrain. There's only the drivetrain that matches how you actually use your vehicle. Buying four-wheel drive for a car that never leaves the highway is paying for capability you'll never touch. Buying all-wheel drive and assuming it replaces good tires is setting yourself up for a dangerous surprise the first time you need to stop suddenly on ice. And writing off front-wheel drive as the cheap option is ignoring genuinely smart engineering that quietly does its job better than its reputation suggests. The best drivetrain isn't the one with the most marketing hype behind it. It's the one that was actually engineered for the roads you drive every single day. So next time you're standing in a dealership and a salesperson tells you that all-wheel drive is simply better than front-wheel drive, or that four-wheel drive means you're prepared for anything, remember what's actually happening underneath the car. Better isn't a fixed answer. It's a question that depends entirely on where you live, what you drive through, and how honest you're willing to be about your own daily routine. Get that part right, and the badge on the back of the car stops mattering nearly as much as people think it does. Understand what's actually spinning under your car, and you'll never fall for a drivetrain sticker again.